During the glory days of Jamestown professional baseball, one of the most well-known individuals was Greg Mulleavy. He was the manager during the championship years of 1941 and 1942. The team featured the likes of Johnny Newman, Johnny O'Neill, Elmer Weinschreider, Lyle Parkhurst, among others. Attendance was at an all-time high of over 122,000 in 1941 and 143,000 in 1942, an all-time Jamestown high and a minor league record high for several years. Greg Mulleavy was born in Detroit in 1905 and played shortstop for the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox. He became well known for his 8 memorable years at Buffalo, which in later years led to his election in the Buffalo Baseball Hall of Fame. After retiring in 1940, he came to Jamestown as a player-manager, where he hit .355 in 1941 and .320 in 1942. Those were the days of the great Jamestown-Olean rivalry, where Greg Mulleavy and Jake Pittler, the Olean pilot, were part of the color and hot civic pride that permeated the league. Ironically, in 1958, Jake Pittler and Greg Mulleavy's paths would cross as teammates as they were coaches for the Los Angeles Dodgers. However, it was the early 1940s when Pittler and Mulleavy were managers against each other in what was then called the finest Class D league in baseball, and to which old-timers still refer.
Walk with Billy, 'cause Billy knows just where to walk. And when I talk, I always talk with Billy, 'cause Billy knows just how to talk. And when I dine, I always dine with Billy, 'cause he takes me where I get my fill. Want you to know I love him so. I just want to be with Bill.
Leaving Jamestown, Greg managed in Olean, Lockport, Easton, Maryland, Elmira, and here we see him as the manager in the International League for Montreal. To the right of Greg is former Jamestown owner Harry Bisgeyer. However, wherever Greg managed during the baseball season, he would always return to Jamestown and Chestnut Street, where he would work at Bigelow's during the off-season in the men's area. In 1958, Greg took a job with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and there he moved his entire family out west. However, his legacy will long be remembered here in Jamestown, and no better person to preserve that memory than his son, Greg Mulleavy, Jr. Greg spent his adolescence living in Jamestown and following his dad and his career at Municipal Stadium. In May of 1991, Greg returned home to celebrate the first Lucy Fest, where we had a chance to interview him.
Doing a new play, The Lay of the Land in Pittsburgh. Frequent guest star on TV's Hunter. He appeared recently on Broadway. Rumors, and he'll be seen soon in the new released movies Undertow and Cover Up. Former star Mary Hartman. Ladies and gentlemen, one of Jamestown's very own Greg Mulleavy.
Probably remember the name. My father is probably somebody you know who used to manage the Jamestown Falcons. Remember the Falcons? factor, brings back all kinds of memories. I remember hearing about Vikings, the Vikings. Any of you out there ever heard of Vikings? Remember it? The Vikings, to me, when I first came to Jamestown, when I was growing up here, they were supposed to be like Eric the Red. The Vikings discovered America before Christopher Columbus. Isn't that right? You've heard that before, some of you? Correct? Right? Needless to say, I thought the Vikings were explorers, these big Norsemen, discovering America. Instead, I found out a Viking was someone that went to the lodge on Saturday night, drank glue, and didn't show up for work on Monday morning. Is that the true story of a Viking? Growing up in...
As an accomplished actor, best known for Mary Hartman, and as the cowboy Mule Canby in Centennial. Yet on this day, it was baseball and his recollections of 1941, 1942, and the early years in Jamestown.
Remember this.
Oh, dear God.
Remember all those?
Oh, my God, there I am. Oh, Jesus, I was a bat boy, kind of.
You spent
At-large bat boy.
You spent a lot of time around the stadium?
Oh, God, yes. I was a stadium rat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all I did. I lived to do that. Whenever he'd let me go down there, which was I begged to go to every game, of course, and I couldn't. Because part of me was in school at the time, and part of me wasn't. Part of me was at the park. I used to hate it when there's Elmer Weinstein. Remember him, the first baseman, the big first baseman? There's Dwayne Schaefer. I can't see it. I gotta get my glasses. Oh, here they are. Let's see who all these guys are. I remember Elmer Weinsteiner. He used to be a pal of mine. And I would love to play with him. And then Johnny Newman, too. We'd play catch. Big John Newman.
Good pitcher, John.
And I used to love that. That used to be the thrill of my life. Be able to play with these guys who were like gods to me at the time, these minor league ball players, most of whom never went on beyond Class D at the time, or if they did, they may have got as high as the International League. But to me, they were gods that walked, trod the turf at Municipal Stadium, and they were these giants who were great ball players, and I got the opportunity as a little kid to play catch with them and take infield practice. I would take infield practice with these guys. And that was a great thrill. That was pretty good, And those were great days. Jamestown had great civic pride about those teams and the teams in those days because they were winners. 41 and 42, they won. And this one particularly was an all-time winner. One of the better records I've ever had here. And as I say, in those days it was the only game in town. And I can remember people cheering like crazy. I remember one time my dad hit it inside the park. And he tripped over third base, and he scrambled, and the team got up just as he crossed. As a matter of fact, one time he stumbled. He hit third base. He stumbled, and he fell right before home plate. And three of the guys got up. The on-deck hitter and two guys leapt from the bench and dragged him across home plate.
He's doing it the hard way.
They took it the hard way, and he scored. Just by a couple of feet. And he was so winded because my father unfortunately smoked in those days. Ball players used to endorse cigarette ads in those days. And it was a macho thing to do, to smoke and play. And of course he got winded easily, and that's one of the problems. He was not, well, he wasn't old then, but older than most of the players.
Ted Williams in Chesterfield, they made a lot of promotions.
Oh gosh, and I remember Mickey Mantle, I don't even think he smoked, but he endorsed Camel cigarettes. Dear God. And of course, I liked a full smoke when I was a kid, thinking that was the right thing to do, because everybody did. Now everybody chews in its ways. Dear God, they did in those days too. Not as many though.
It's interesting, I see here Swat Erickson was a member of that team, stayed in Jamestown.
God, remember Swat? Yeah.
The son of the major leaguer. Lyle Parkhurst is on that team. Lyle's still.
Lyle Parkhurst, I remember him well, yeah. Yeah.
Lyle's the third from the left in the front.
There he is, yeah, sure. There he is, Lyle Parkhurst.
Pretty much looks the same.
He does. I do too, if you may have noticed. I haven't grown all that much. My hair's a little longer there. Had a few more hairs, but not too many. Still got the same pose. I've got those shoes still, I think. In those days, I can remember dreaming that one day I would get enough money. Because I delivered papers, too. I was about 7 or 8 years old in this picture. And I dreamed of getting a pair of kangaroo baseball shoes. That's what they used to wear in those days, kangaroos. And notice I don't have baseball shoes on, but if I had had them, believe me, I would have worn them.
You would have been on there?
Yeah, they would have been on. And finally, I saved up some money to get a pair of kangaroos. And they would, in those days, they didn't have kids. They were about that much longer than the regular. But by God, I wanted them. I stuffed them with paper, newspaper. But I got my shoes, and I was so proud of them. Dear God. I remember this kid. He was a bat boy, I think. Wasn't he, this guy here? Or was he? The gods that walked between the base paths. Here they are, folks. That's what they were to me. And that's what I remember most about the team. That I looked up to these guys. They were my heroes. And they didn't disappoint me. Like, they did not have feet of clay like the ball players today. You know, they do so many stupid and scandalous. There were no drugs in those days, and I don't know what their private lives were, but nobody was very much interested if they did anything risque, and I doubt if they did. They were all pretty clean living. It was a different time, a gentler time, and a perhaps
very, very serious.
In a way, a better time. At least in my mind it was. Of course, one tends to look back through the rosy-colored glass of time and see the past as perhaps having been better. But it did seem better, and I think it was better than today, because, as I say, they did not have feet of clay. They were my heroes, and they are to this day still heroes in my mind. They didn't do anything to dishonor them.
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm happy as a king, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything. The mere idea of you, the longing here.
A little bit about your dad's career.
Well, my dad started in the sandlots of Detroit. For P.O.N.Y Coal was the first picture I ever saw of my dad playing ball. He had a mitt. I think it was about as big as my hand. In those days, the mitts were so small, as you know. And oddly enough, we looked an awful lot alike in many respects. And I can recall him playing sandlot, and that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid, was play ball, and that's all he ever wanted to do. And all he really ever did much. He didn't go. He went to school as little as possible, and played ball all the time. He would skip sometimes to play ball. I don't recommend that to anybody, but that's what he would do. And then he played for another company team. The name I can't remember. P.O.N.Y Coal was the first one. Then he played like Legion ball as a little older man. But he played before it was his time. He's a very good player. He started playing American Legion before he was a teenager, which is pretty unusual. And he wasn't big for his age. He was just good. And he caught the attention of some people, and he began to play more regularly, and then he played regular Legion, not junior Legion. He began to play regular Legion ball when he was in his early teens. And he almost signed a contract when he was 15, but his mother wouldn't let him do it. So he went to work. See, my dad got out of high school, and he went to work. He got out fairly early, and he went to work for Fisher Body, because his uncle was the head of Fisher Body. His name.
What ultimately brought him to Jamestown? Did he bring the family with gift
Yes,
at the time?
this was the first place. We had lived in Buffalo, but he fell in love with the area, and he knew a guy named Fred Smith, who was one of his best friends, who's still alive today, living in Jamestown, who's a native. And how he ever got the job here, I guess he got to know Harry Bisgeier, I guess, who convinced him to come down here and play and manage. And they fell in love with the area. What's not to fall in love with this area? I mean, it's gorgeous, as you know, and that's why you're here, and that's why Russ is here. Because it's a gorgeous area. And that's why I'm here. I love to come back, and why I'm interested in buying some land here. We lived in Lakewood, and loved it. And then we lived in Jamestown, loved that equally as much. And it's a great place to raise a family, and that's what attracted him most to this area.
What did Dad do in the off-season when he was here?
He worked at Bigelow's.
Bigelow's,
Yeah, he was like the assistant manager of the men's department, and he got along well. He didn't want any pressure job, and he got along very well. And the Bigelows were friends and fans, and they gave him a great deal. Believe me, he didn't have to work too hard. They paid him very well. He was a real goodwill ambassador, and I think they paid him more than most of the clerks there, and he was happy to do that. So he enjoyed that.
Now,
I remember one winter during the war, they used to go down to, and not only did he go from there and go down and unload things at the old Erie Railroad Station for the war effort.
Yeah.
And I went down and helped him one time. He said, "Jesus, this is hard work." And I don't know what the heck we were unloading and loading. Probably had nothing to do with the war effort, but it was free labor. They loved it. Big. And a home run kid. You know, and a terrifically nice guy, Mr. Nice Guy, and wonderful. And of course, as a kid growing up, he was one of my great heroes because he would play catch with me, and he was always nice to me. And he carried me around on his shoulders a couple of times. And he was a great roly-poly, burly guy who wasn't that big. And of course, I knew him over the years. He was always my hero. I remember getting on a bus as a kid to go downtown from Chestnut Street downtown, and then even in high school, he was a bus driver. He was still Johnny Newman to me, but he could hardly, you know, that wheel, in those days, wheel would make a groove in his stomach. There would be the belt, boop, and then the groove with the steering wheel hit his stomach. And he got larger and larger and larger, and unfortunately that obesity.
Did you go on the road with the team in those days?
Oh, sure.
Johnny was
those recollections are wonderful. In those days, in the early 40s, they had station wagons, woody station wagons, that my dad would drive, and I would sit there with the guys, and I can remember the peanut shucks. We had peanut shucks. They would bounce on the things. They weren't the most stable machines in the world, you know. And that wood body got loose awful fast. It rattled like hell, and it vibrated. I can remember the damn wood, the peanut shucks going up and down the thing. And we used to be 6 to 8 guys in a station wagon. It was pretty cramped, but we had a great time. We sang, we sing songs. We had a hell of a time.
A lot of foggy rides back from Wellsville.
Oh boy, from Wellsville, Olean, Bradford.
A lot of those stadiums are gone now. They don't exist anymore.
I know.
Jamestown's one of the few.
I'll do it.
My father remembers many things about your dad, and one of the things he remembered and wanted me to just remind you was of his yell. Apparently, he had a yell which was.
Well, he had a whistle. That was
whistle.
They called him the whistle.
Yeah.
And it went something like this. Only he did it 3 times louder than that.
Yeah.
And would be the. He'd do this little short thing and then this long one. And it was a whistle that he used to gain attention, and he'd clap when he was coaching, like third base or something, and even for the dugout. And it was an incredibly large whistle.
Did he call you
loud
home?
Whistle.
Call you home at night?
Oh yeah, and that was the whistle. We heard that when we had to scoot home fast. My mother called, we could linger, but when my dad called, we lickety split home because he was a strict disciplinarian in many respects, and then also the nicest guy in the world. I mean, he was never too rough. Although he
standing room only.
Standing room only, all the way around. And they roped it off. After the ball was hit up there, you were in big trouble, you know.
And that's the days too, when the crowd, buy their tickets, they were backed all the way up to Falcon Street, almost to Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, there was fan support like you wouldn't believe it. I'm sure today there's some enthusiasm, but probably not like that. It was the only game in town then, you know. And in those days, there wasn't any television, and it was just radio. And people used to stay glued to this set. There was a hot pennant race.
Yes.
And do you remember Jake Pittman?
Yes, yeah. I was never very close to him, but certainly by name.
Well, I can remember my dad talking. They used to stage, and then when they get serious, plan to get increased fan support, fan attendance, to increase attendance. They would have arguments with the umpires, and then they argue amongst themselves. You know, Jake and my father used to go at it, and they would plan what they do and what inning they do this, and then the papers would be full of this stuff, and boy, the fans would come out in droves the next night.
So like a wrestling match, they were the...
Well, there was an element of theatricality, a little showbiz in both their veins.
Well,
I think some of that rubbed off on me.
Wanted.
And the fans liked that, but I can remember when my father managed Olean many years later, from the 46, I guess it was. He, or, yeah, 47 maybe, because that's when he first started. Olean was the Dodger farm.
Yeah.
And that's when he first went with the Dodgers. He managed Lockport in 46, I think it was, 45. And then he, but anyway, I remember him arguing, you know, and the veins would pop out. I thought, dear God, I used to get so involved. And even in the early 40s, I'd get so involved, too, because I was just a little itty-bitty guy, you know. When my dad would argue, I thought it was for real, you know, and I would get all upset. And he'd come back and he'd say, I'm just kidding, don't worry, kid, don't worry, son. Don't worry, it's not that serious, he would say. He never admitted that it was an act until much later, and I thought,
Okay, Lucy, you're last, Lucy. I'm sorry. You have to watch Greg go through this now. Okay, Greg is next.
And the envelope, please.
Pencil's coming.
You can go back when you're a big girl.
This is such a thrill. To be immortalized in Brooklyn Square.
Maybe not tonight. It's supposed to be like a snowflake. Each one is separate, different.
Here is, of course, 1923. All right, my name. Okay, Nanette.
Ready? G.
But make good teams.
God, the concrete's setting already. I can't get up. Where's my mother when I need her? All right. Alice, where are you when I need her?
Terry.
History Center in Jamestown, New York. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation, which is just one of many stories from our community's rich history. The Fenton History Center preserves our shared history through the presentation of educational programs and exhibits, the maintenance of a collection of local artifacts and archival materials, and a library specializing in local history and genealogy, all for the benefit and use of the public. For more information about the Fenton History Center and its activities, call 664-6256.